Hello, my name is Evelyn Joy and welcome back to my channel. This video might be for you, it might not be for you, it might only be for me, but I was inspired to make this video when I watched a video from another girl that grew up very similar to myself. So today, I'm going to be talking about what it was like for me growing up with someone with undiagnosed narcissistic personality disorder. Now, to my brother Mark, if you watch this and something I say offends you, because I am talking about our mother, I'm like not trying to cry at the very beginning of this. Sorry, our mother did pass away, and I don't believe in talking bad about someone who has passed away. So I'm gonna try to just share my side of the pancake. Every story has three sides: my side, her side, and the truth, right? So I'm not gonna preface this with I was the perfect daughter or anything like that, but I grew up with a mother that, according to WebMD, fits a lot of the traits of someone with narcissistic personality disorder. So I wanted to talk about I'm going to try my best to put a positive spin on it, but also share my truth, what I grew up with. And maybe this will help someone, or maybe it's just for me to vent. I don't know. But I think it's therapeutic, hopefully, to actually talk about it rather than pretend like my childhood never happened. And I'm really trying to do this without crying. Sorry. I realize that I am live. The reason that I'm live is because I want to use my awesome camera that I can't use if I pre-record it. So I'm actually not going to be replying to the chat box, but hello, thank you for coming. You're welcome to give a thumbs up. And I'm not trying to start crying right at the beginning. I apologize. But yeah, my mom did pass away, so I'm going to try my best to just share my side of the story without disrespecting her memory. I think it's only fair to talk about the good things of my mom to start off before we go into the diagnosis that I'm diagnosing. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but we can look at the symptoms and the traits of someone with narcissistic personality disorder. Can I just say my mom would be livid if she knew I was making this video? Livid. And that's part of the disorder, right? So first of all, before we dive into what is narcissistic personality disorder, I want to say my mom did the best she could with what she had. And like, as a mom, that's all you can do, you know. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cry through this. I do not in any way want you guys to think of me as a victim, but I want to share my truth in case it could help someone. Sorry, I'm not trying to cry at all. I didn't even start the story. But my mom raised us the best she could. There was always a roof over our heads. There was always food available to us. And, you know, we never, when I broke my ankle, she took me to the doctor. So she took care of us, physically. But we're going to talk about a few of the negative things of growing up with someone like this. She did the best she could with what she had, right? So I don't want to fault her for that. But let's talk about this. So this is from webmd.com. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to be responding to the chat box. I'm actually going to cover it up with my phone as I read this. It's human nature to be selfish and boastful now and then. But true narcissists take it to an extreme. They don't just have extra self-confidence. They don't value others' feelings or ideas and ignore others' needs. Sorry. But there's a difference between being self-absorbed, often called a narcissist, and having narcissistic personality disorder. which is a mental illness and shouldn't be left untreated, just saying. But if you can recognize a few of the traits below, that's someone who's self-absorbed. If he has most of them, or she might have the disorder. A therapist can get to the bottom of it. So obviously I'm not a therapist. She was never diagnosed, but I'm just calling a spade. So if the shoe fits, you know. So sorry. My purpose of this video is not for people to feel sorry for me. I'm not trying to cry. I'm trying to make this something that could maybe help someone, or maybe just me, I guess. So the word comes from a Greek myth in which a handsome young man named Narcissus sees his own reflection in a pool of water and falls in love with it. Sound like someone you know? Are people often upset with him? Is it hard for him or her to keep relationships? Does she tend to put herself first and think she knows the only right way? Someone with narcissistic personality disorder might also think about himself most of the time and talk about himself a lot. Crave attention and admiration, exaggerate his talents and achievements, believe he's special, set unrealistic goals, have wide, fast mood swings. Oh my God. And I'm mostly going to be talking about what it's like to grow up as a child of someone with this disorder and how you can heal from your childhood. Because I have healed a lot. That's how I am who I am. Otherwise, I would be a shell of a human. I would still be a child. Have a hard time taking others' feelings seriously. Strive to win whatever it takes. Fantasize about unlimited success, money, and power. Someone like this may appear to have high self-esteem, but listen, the opposite is probably true, and that comes out in some ways. So they want to put up a front like, I have high self-esteem, but inside the opposite is probably true. There's a deep, deep sense of insecurity, and that drives a lot of what narcissists do, at least my mother. A lot of that irrational, unpredictable rage comes from insecurity. I really, really think that's true. It's a lot of insecurity. So there's a deep sense of insecurity underneath the grand exterior. He or she wants others to be envious, but often she's the jealous one. I can't tell you how true this is. I'm not trying to bash my mom, but I'm talking about facts. The insecurity and the jealousy drove my mother's personality all of my life. And from what I've heard before I was born, all of her life probably, or most of it. We're going to talk about how some of it's genetic, but some of it is how your parents raise you. So some of it is environmental. Different factors affect it, right? So he wants others to be envious. Sorry, I'm rereading the sentence. She wants others to be envious, but often she's the jealous one. She's competitive and threatened by others' achievements, even to an irrational degree, I would say, in my mom's case, very irrational. Her relationships are often stormy and short-lived. That's how my mom was with her marriages and with her friendships. Obviously, her kids, we were loyal to her, but even myself, I got to a point where I had to cut ties with her for a while, 3 years to be exact, because we'll talk about that later. She's competitive and threatened by others' achievements. Her relationships are often stormy and short-lived. She leaves a trail of hurt feelings in her wake. That's the only reason I've had tears this video. I'm not trying to fake anything or make anybody feel sorry for me. I'm just talking about my side of the pancake. I want to say facts, but facts from my perspective, right? She's easily hurt, but either chooses to not show it or overreacts in rage. That sentence is the definition of my mother throughout my childhood. She's easily hurt, but either chooses not to show it or overreacts in rage. For my mom, if she's at work, she's going to save it up, boil it up, and explode at me at home. If she's having relationship problems, but her boyfriend left her and she can't explode at him, she would come home and explode at me. She can't really explode much at my older brother because he was bigger and stronger and didn't put up with it. I was kind of a doormat. Unfortunately, I didn't learn to stand up for myself. My defense mechanism was to let it happen and try to be the calm, cool, collected one, while really I was an emotional punching bag for my mom. I was her outlet, and that's an abusive situation. Even if someone's not physically hitting you, which only happened once or twice with my mom, it's not okay to behave that way. Obviously, I'm not talking about how all mothers are. Obviously, we're all different, but I mean, like, we get mad at our kids, we realize our fault, we apologize. My mother would explode with irrational rage that lasted up to 3 hours. And it could be over the smallest thing. Irrational rage. And she could go off and scream at the top of her lungs at me for 3 hours straight. And this is me as a little girl, me as an adult, and all the way in between. And as an adult, I still reacted like a child. I saw myself, and I'm going to continue reading and give examples later. When I was 21 years old and I was single and I was home visiting from college, and she was screaming at me we were about 2 hours in. I was curled in the fetal position on the bed, crying my eyes out, sobbing, begging her to stop screaming. And she did not have the presence of mind to see me in my state and stop herself. She did not have the presence of mind to remember back to how she treated me or how I reacted and apologize. She did not have the presence of mind to stop herself and say, I don't want to do this again to my child, because she did it over and over throughout my life. And we're saying she could explode over the smallest thing. Some of it I had blocked out of my memory. It was that bad. But a friend of mine reminded me of a memory that she could explode at me over opening a package of cheese, over opening a package of crackers. And she could scream at me for 3 hours, up to 3 hours, about opening a package of cheese or opening a package of crackers. And so as an adult, for the longest time, my first year of marriage, I was asking my husband, I'm sorry, are you mad? I'm sorry, are you mad? Our first year of marriage, he's always like, why would I be mad about that? Because I grew up with a parent with irrational rage. So like, you could get mad, like she could, why couldn't someone else? So I spent the first year of my marriage worried that I had made my husband mad. And he was like, no, Evelyn, like, that's not rational to get mad like that. And I'm like, well, you don't have to have a rational reason to get mad, you know, like, that's how I grew up. So, and also, I was going to say something else, but I forgot. But, oh yeah, the kitchen. So a lot of times her anger revolved around things in the kitchen. So I, as an adult, felt like there's a force field around the kitchen. Like, I'm not allowed in there. Like, I'm not allowed to touch. And that's part of the reason why I haven't really learned how to cook that much. Like, I had to, as an adult, realize what I was doing and teach myself how to cook. So sorry, I'm trying to. But my mom's very particular about food, but we'll talk about that later. Again, if my brother watches this, I'm really sorry if I say anything that is offensive to you. I'm not trying to talk bad about mom. I'm just, you know, talking about my childhood, which is great. Okay, sorry. He or she, I'm continuing to read. He or she I guess I'm reading again what I read before. He or she is easily hurt, but either chooses not to show it or overreacts in rage. She can't stand criticism. Oh, that's so true. She makes excuses and refuses to take responsibility for her flaws and failures. She sees herself as a natural leader who can easily sway others. She doesn't listen and often interrupts. It's a one-way street. All take, no give. Okay, sorry. I'm not trying to cry in this video. I'm sorry. Like, I was thinking I'm good to talk about this. I'm not going to cry at all. Right. Someone can be a narcissist and not have the disorder. He may be self-absorbed or hyper-competitive, but not to the extent that it disrupts his daily life. It disrupted every aspect of my mom's daily life. It's proven that most people are drawn to narcissists and find them attractive, charismatic, and exciting. My mom had 5 husbands. Confidence is charming, and successful leaders are often more assertive and demanding. I'll say that's true. Diagnosis. There are no lab tests to confirm a mental disorder. Many professionals use the Narcissistic Personality Inventory, a list of 40 questions that measures things such as how much attention and power someone craves. Personality disorders are long-standing, ingrained, dysfunctional patterns of thinking, behaving, and relating to other people that can show up as early as age 8. When children start to become aware of how people react to them, people with narcissistic personality disorder tend not to perceive that they themselves may have a mental health problem, and thus may be less likely to see evaluation or treatment. Like, if you're a narcissist and you think so highly of yourself and you so don't want anyone to ever think anything negative of you, you can't stand it, there's no way. There's no way, if you're an adult, that you would at all seek help for this. No way. I mean, even if I had pointed this out to my mother when she was alive, she would have been livid. Livid. But it's not hard to make her livid. Not hard. All you have to do is anything. A recent study at Ohio State University says many people readily admit to being a narcissist. Okay, if you're willing to admit that you're a narcissist, you don't have narcissistic personality disorder, okay? Because you don't want anyone to think anything negative of you ever, okay? So researchers say they're probably proud of it and don't see looking out for number 1 as a flaw. Okay, that can be true. Causes. All right, this is fascinating to me. So this might just be interesting to me, but I'm just going to read it. The exact cause is not known, but there are several theories. Many think it's a mix of things. from how the person handles stress to how he or she was raised. I think it's a combination. Parents who put their children on a pedestal, that was my mom, and shower them with endless praise can plant a seed of narcissism. A recent study found there's a line between being nurturing and supportive and inflating an ego. Then again, the opposite is true. Children who are ignored or abused tend to be self-centered, almost as a survival instinct. They feel they need to look out for themselves because no one else will. And I think both were true of my mom, but I think both were true of me as well, in a way. Well, not totally, but I was both ignored, abused, and put on a pedestal, and so was my mom. But I honestly think I have more presence of mind than to have. I definitely don't think I have this disorder, but I think I'm affected as a child of someone with this disorder. Treatments. There is no cure, but therapy can help. The goal is to build up the person's poor self-esteem and have more realistic expectations of others. That's smart. There aren't drugs to treat this mental disorder. Sometimes I think it could be a hormonal imbalance. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. There aren't drugs to treat this mental disorder, but depression and anxiety sometimes go hand in hand with narcissism. Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, depression and anxiety definitely go with this disorder, at least in my mom's case. Sometimes go hand in hand with narcissism, and there are helpful drugs for those conditions. If the narcissist abuses alcohol or drugs, my mom did not to my knowledge. She drank a little, but very occasionally. I never saw her drunk. If a narcissist abuses alcohol or drugs, which is common, it's important to get treatment for the addictions too. With children, experts suggest that parents who give too much praise cut back, while those who don't pay enough attention step up. Narcissists can learn how to relate to others in more positive ways, but it depends on how open they are to critical feedback and how willing they are to change. So that's all we have in the article. So now I'm going to talk about, I'm going to keep the chat box covered up. It's fine if you guys chat in the box, but I'm not going to read it while I am talking. Not that I don't want to hear what you have to say, but I want to keep on track. My mom raised us with a frame of mind that was sympathetic to her. I don't know if that makes sense. Let me explain. In every situation, my mom painted herself as the victim. So any sort of conflict or divorce, I personally felt sorry for my mom. I felt like and believed that she was the victim. I felt like and believed that other people were in the wrong. I thought men were evil. When some of the evil was coming from her. I wouldn't call it brainwashed, but maybe it is. But when you're a kid, you believe everything that your mom tells you, right? So my mom, she always said she was the perfect little girl. That her sisters, she has 2 older sisters, her sisters always misbehaved and got punished. So that was her side of the pancake. That was her perspective that she wanted others to believe about her childhood, and I believed it for a very long time. Then as an adult talking to my aunt, the perspective was different. their father was physically abusive. But my mom was the youngest. And by the time my mom was born, when she was little, their father stopped being physically abusive and to them, and still on occasion was physically abusive to their mother. On at least one occasion was sexually abusive towards the middle daughter, and was emotionally abusive, especially to the middle daughter and the older daughter. My mom was the youngest, and she demanded special treatment, and they gave in to her whims. So her sisters were never allowed any extracurricular activities. After school, they had to come home and watch their little sister. But my mom, she got to take violin lessons, so she was privileged. My mom, she got to go to Youth for Christ events, and she was crowned the queen of the banquet. Sort of like prom queen, but in the Christian world. They weren't allowed to go to dances at the public school. So my mom, got used to being crowned and everyone looking at her as so beautiful. And she told her sister that she was embarrassed to have any friends over to the house because her sister was fat. My aunt, the middle child, she grew up being told almost every day by her father that she was a pig, that she was fat, that she was undesirable, and she believed the things she was told. And my mother believed those things about her too. And I think that no child should have to endure a childhood like they did. So we see that some of the parenting from my mom's dad rubbed off on her. So anytime she treated us bad, she said, if you think I'm treating you bad, you should have seen how my father was with my sisters, right? There was one situation where it's a memory that my aunt has, the middle child, that one day over something that she did not do, she got blamed for something, and he beat her with a belt. And to this day, in her 60s, she still has the scar on her leg. And her mother said she did not do that thing, and he never apologized. He just said, Even when he acknowledged that she didn't do what she got beaten terribly for, he said, well, I punished her for something that she's gotten away with. Like surely there's something that she's done that she's gotten away with, so she deserved it anyway. Come to think of it, he was a narcissist. Did he have this personality disorder? I don't know, but he was an abusive man. And he didn't drink, so this is not coming from that. He had a sister who was psychotic and crazy, and I think some of this is genetic. Some of this personality disorder stuff, I think, is coming from genetics. So my mom did the best that she could with what she had, right? But she allowed us to believe, she taught us a false narrative about her childhood. So she allowed us to believe that she was the perfect child, that she was never punished because she behaved so well, when really she was never punished because she was a spoiled brat. And she was a penny pincher too, very careful with money, and to an extreme degree. But she was smart with money. A lot of things she taught me, and I appreciate them. I will never have cable because that saves you money every month. You don't need to have cable TV. Anyway, I will always compare prices at the grocery store because my mom taught me that, looking at ounces and everything, and even looking at ingredients sometimes and stuff. So she taught me some good stuff. What did my mom think of me? I was a precious little girl, and my mom always dressed herself in the finest clothes, and she dressed me in hand-me-down little boy clothes from my brothers. Looking back, I didn't realize until I became a mother that when you're in the grocery store, people will constantly tell you how beautiful your children are. And as a part of my mom's narcissistic personality disorder, I don't know if this is true or not, but I suspect that she was jealous of me because I was a cute little blonde girl with blue eyes, cute as a button, and I'm sure hundreds of people at the grocery store told her how cute I was. So she dressed me in a boyish manner, and she always dolled up herself. I'm not offended by it. I was fine with it. But it shows some of her personality. My mom ran for the Mrs. Kansas pageant after she had one adopted son and one natural born son. She was very proud of the fact that she got second place, but also very angry of the fact that she got second place. And then as an adult, I found out from my aunt that she was making herself throw up in order to get skinny for that pageant. And I found out as an adult from my dad that there were only 3 women in the competition. So my mom got second place out of 3. But she spent her whole life telling everyone that she was first runner-up for Mrs. Kansas and that one of the judges told her that she should have been Mrs. Kansas. She has an article that she framed, and we put it on display at her funeral because she still had it. Honestly, if I ran for Mrs. Kansas and got second place, I will probably end up burying the article in some file box. I want to be so quite proud, but then again, you know, she worked really hard dieting and all that. She would tell everyone how she dieted and exercised. She would eat half a chef's salad and a quarter cup of strawberries, and she would go on long walks with the dog. And she always conveniently left out that she had an eating disorder. But I mean, she always wanted everyone to think higher of her than maybe she thought of herself, or than even was accurately portrayed in reality, right? Every time she got a divorce, we moved churches so that at the new church, no one would know how many divorces she had had. She even had a wedding. It was her 4th wedding. And all of the guests at the wedding thought that it was her 2nd marriage, except for a couple of us who are her family members. I'm not trying to put my mom down. So I guess I'm going to stop dwelling on my childhood and adulthood and that. I'm going to talk about moving on as an adult. I never stood up to my mom until she was violent around my own child. You see, I didn't have enough in me to defend myself, but I'm a mama bear, and I won't let anyone threaten my child. When my first daughter was 3 weeks old, my mom tried to fight my husband 2 feet away from my baby. And I told her that in order to be in contact with us, she needed to apologize to my husband, which she's never apologized to anyone in her life. With the exception of when she was on her deathbed, she said sort of an apology over text message. But she needed to apologize to my husband. Second, she needed to promise never to be violent around my kids again. What was the third? I felt like there was a third, but those were the main two pretty much. Apologize to my husband and promise never to be violent around my children again. And she refused to do those things. And so for 3 years, we were out of contact until she was in the hospital dying of cancer. I brought my kids to visit her. And in the hospital, she was spreading lies to all of her cousins, telling all of her cousins that my aunt, her middle sister, who somehow she's managed to always be jealous of her sister, even though her sister is supposedly the fat one, supposedly the unloved one. She's always jealous of my aunt because I still continued having a friendship with my aunt and occasionally seeing her because she didn't do anything wrong. Oh, my mom also, before our falling out, she made up a lie about my aunt. And I kind of believed it, but let it go. And it was a lie. She told me that my aunt was talking bad about my husband to my dad on my wedding. And I was just like, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. Oh, well. Then my mom told my aunt that my brother had because she didn't hear it. She said that my brother had, and she told me never to ask my brother about it. I still haven't asked him about it, but I've asked my aunt and my dad about it, and this never happened. What happened was my aunt went over and said hello to my dad, and my mom was profusely jealous, super jealous over it. So anyway, my mom told my aunt, Mark sorry to say my brother's name, Evelyn's brother overheard you talking to her dad and talking bad about her husband. And you ruined her wedding, and she was so upset with you, and she'll probably never forgive you. And so my aunt, having not done this, wrote an apology letter to me saying, not saying she did that, but saying, I am so sorry if anything I've ever said has offended you. If I ruined your wedding, I am so, so sorry. And I'm like, Aunt Brenda, like, I take everything my mom says with a grain of salt. Like, and honestly, if someone talks behind your back at your wedding, like, oh, well, get over it. And that's life. Worse things have happened in my life, let me tell you. Someone talking bad about us behind our back at our wedding, it's not going to ruin my wedding, personally. Later, a couple years later, I asked my dad. That never happened. Never happened. And knowing my aunt and my dad, they're telling the truth. Knowing my mom, she's lying. Definitely. When my mom was on her deathbed, she was telling all of her cousins that my aunt was to blame for causing a wedge between me and my mom for 3 years, and that's why we weren't talking, because my aunt was the one that was causing division between me and my mom. My aunt was in Missouri when my mom tried to fight my husband in front of my newborn when she was 3 weeks old. Okay, so my aunt had no part in that situation at all. So how did she cause division? But it's an easier narrative to blame someone else, especially someone you're jealous of, right? So on her deathbed, she was choosing to cause division in her family, which is just great that I had to message and explain to my mom's cousins, that's not what happened. Sorry. And they were like, I'm never going to be mad at your mom's sister because we know the personalities. We know what to expect, which one lies and which one has better personality. So maybe my aunt was overweight. Maybe she was called ugly or fat. Maybe she believed it. But if we're looking at personalities, no wonder my mom was jealous. She could never have a kind, loving, generous demeanor or personality like her sister. Maybe that's why she was jealous, because her sister was more likable. Her sister actually could have friendships and relationships, and even kept a friendship with her ex-husband and took care of him as he was dying of cancer. The husband that left her and her kids. Years later, she took care of him as he was dying. My mom could never do that. My mom and dad were never able to have a civilized relationship. So my dad and stepmom moved to Arkansas to get rid of the drama. And unfortunately, that affected my relationship with my dad. So my mom taught us the narrative that my dad left us, when really my dad was paying a lot of child support every month to me and my brother. Well, to my mom, for me and my brother. And my mom I'm trying not to talk bad of her. But let's just say that child support went into her savings account. And it didn't get spent on us. And when my mom had a daughter outside of marriage that she was going to have to pay out of pocket for and not get child support for, she placed her for adoption. But my mom taught me the narrative that she was so selfless that she wanted my sister to have two parents. And so we should be on her side and not fight her on the fact that she wanted to place our beloved little sister for adoption. And so once again, I felt sorry for my mom, just like with every divorce. I sort of had a mother role towards my mother. I was bullied at school, but I never came to my mom with my problems, but my mom was constantly coming to me with her problems, with her marriage problems. One time in college, she was going through a divorce, and it greatly distressed me that I couldn't fix her marriage problems, but she was crying to me over the phone about her marriage problems, and it greatly distressed me that I couldn't do anything to fix it, because I still was under the mentality it was my job to fix my mother's marriage problems. Spoiler alert. It's never okay for adults to involve children in adult problems. But since the age of 4, I've always felt like I needed to help fix my mom. It wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that she willfully is not changing. I cannot fix her. No matter how much counsel I try to give her, no matter how much Bible verses I try to give her, she is not listening. She's not willing to change. She's not able to change. It's just the way she is. She has narcissistic personality disorder. Now, you can choose to agree or disagree. I'm just sharing my side of the story. I'm not saying I'm a victim, but growing up the way that I did definitely stunted my emotional growth. And it wasn't until, unfortunately, I cut off my relationship with my mom that I was able to begin to heal from my childhood. And I believe that's really true. And I would say that to you, no matter what kind of abusive childhood you've had or abusive relationship you've been in, I really honestly believe, at least from my experience, that you can't begin to heal until you cut off the abusive relationship. Because as long as you're still an emotional punching bag, as long as you're still controlled by someone, as long as you're still their doormat, you can't heal from that because you're still being constantly wounded. Does that make any sense? You can't grow up emotionally if you're still being beaten down. You can't move on if you're still in the situation. I don't know if that makes any sense, but if that resonates with you, if that's something that you need to do, it's okay to take care of yourself. You see, I grew up believing that I needed to protect my mom when I couldn't. I couldn't protect my mom from herself. I couldn't protect my mom from the world. I couldn't protect my mom from her bad choices in men. I couldn't protect my mom from the results of her own decisions. And you know what I needed to do all along? I needed to protect myself, and I didn't. I never, ever thought of protecting myself until I became a mom. And even then, I was only thinking of protecting my children. And even then, I felt extremely guilty. I felt constantly overwhelmed with guilt, knowing that the current husband my mom was living with was receiving all of the emotional punching bag that I used to get. And I thought, oh, that poor man. He is being beaten to a pulp emotionally because my mom is so mad at me and she can't get at me. So the first time in my life, someone else was getting beaten up for my actions, and I felt so bad about it. Because my whole childhood, I was getting beat up emotionally for what other people were doing. And if what I'm saying is not making any sense, when I say beat up emotionally, I mean, have you ever been in a situation where someone screamed at you and yelled at you at the top of their lungs for 3 hours straight, and you said nothing? Or you tried to get in a word edgewise, and that word would be used against you? Have you ever been in the car with someone and they're driving 65 miles an hour on the highway, and you say one thing and they go from 65 to 0 miles an hour in about 2 seconds, and you think you're gonna die? That happened to me once. We were driving home from a meeting with my sister. My brother and I were both adults, but we were made to feel like children because we were under her control once again, because she was driving the car. My sister was in an open adoption, and so before she turned 18, we were allowed to have meetings with her for every Christmas and every birthday. We got to meet up with her and her adopted parents and have some pizza, exchange gifts. And my mom, every time, would take about 150 photos during our little 1-hour visit. And her dad, after years and years of refraining from saying anything, her adopted dad said, let's limit it to like 5 photos so that we can enjoy our time together and it's not just a photo shoot. Because what my mom would do is she would take like 150 photos in our like 1.5 hour visit. And then at our next visit, whether it be Christmas or my sister's birthday, she would get a photo album of the last visit. And it was like my mom trying to show like, oh, look how nice we are that we give you nice gifts and we, you know, don't forget about us, because I don't know. I don't get it. So my brother and I actually were like, yes, somebody said it. That wasn't us. So we were both kind of like, yay, mom's not going to be taking pictures the whole time. We can actually talk to her. We can actually relax. We can actually enjoy talking to our sister, because we love our sister, but we never get to see her. My mom, she had a demeanor that 99% of the people really thought she was happy. But my brother and I knew better. We knew by her demeanor that she was livid. And she had a laugh to prove it. She would say, that was her fake laugh, meaning, oh, you're going to get it. Oh, no, they didn't just say that. Oh, heck nah. Oh, And when we were in the car, sometimes I feel like when she was raging, she had tunnel vision and all she saw was red. I honestly feel that way. I feel like if she saw a video of how she behaved when she was in a rage, I feel like she would be surprised. At least that's what I tell myself to think that her irrational, unpredictable rage somehow makes sense to me in some way. I tell myself, there's no way she knows how she's behaving. She must just have tunnel vision because she sees what we are doing. She sees what we are doing and saying, but she doesn't see what she's doing and saying. Because she'll be like, how could you say that? Sorry. That's not what you look like, but you get an idea. And it was definitely louder. And that was definitely a sillier face than she would make, for sure. I don't want to make... I see her come out of me when I get mad. But for me, it only lasts 2 minutes. And for her, it lasted 3 hours. So, like, I still feel guilty and apologize and wish it never happened. But I sometimes yell at my kids. I sometimes yell at my husband. And I apologize. And I don't have full control of my anger. But I have perception. I see myself getting angry. And I stop myself. And these are abilities that I'm not sure if my mom just chose not to use or if they're abilities that she did not have. But she definitely chose not to use them if she had them. So driving home, my brother, who was not afraid of my mom, was having a screaming match with my mom. And once again, I apologize if my brother is watching this. Just as I mentioned that I sometimes act like my mom, I really shouldn't. We have dents in some of our doors because I would put a door between me and my brother when he would get in a rage. His wouldn't last 3 hours. His would last maximum 30 minutes, but he would be more physically violent. But he would pound on the door like he wished he was pounding on me, but I was smart enough to put a door between us. But that's the problem. When you grow up with a parent with irrational rage, it's hard to know how to control your own anger because no one has modeled it for you. So it's not really my brother's fault. And I love you if you're watching this, Mark. So my mom and my brother sometimes had screaming matches because my mom, for the most part, would go after me because I was the vulnerable one, and my brother didn't usually stand for it. So my brother was like, it's a good thing that we didn't have to take pictures. Finally, we didn't have to take pictures because we actually had a conversation with her. We actually had a nice time. And my mom was pissed. But she was accepting that my brother was yelling at her because he's bigger than her. And this happens a lot. But she would not accept if I said one word in that conversation. So I was in the back seat praying and just anxious and just rocking back and forth and just plugging my ears and just wishing it would stop. And at the same time, I'm looking at myself and saying, Evelyn, you're like 22 years old. What are you doing? Why are you a 5-year-old right now? Why do you have no control over this situation? So my mom, she doesn't know this to this day. I was electronically rolling down my window. Well, she doesn't know this to this day. She passed away, but you know. I was electronically rolling down my window. My mom was rolling it up. I kept rolling it down. Because I would rather hear the wind on the highway than listen to them scream at each other. Because at least the wind would block out some of their screaming. And I haven't had many panic attacks in my life, but I've had about 3 or 4. And all of them were centered around my mom. Except for one. So I was trying to breathe. I'm trying to remain calm, trying to remind myself, Evelyn, you're not a 5-year-old. You're 22. You don't have to cry. It's fine. And my mom was rolling out my window and I was rolling down the window and they were yelling at each other in the front seat. And I was like, guys, we need to just stop and pray and just like pray for peace. And they were like that would help, right? Like we believe in God, but like, why don't we go to him in the worst situations? I mean, duh. So I was praying and I was just like, God, help it to stop. And then my mom said something And I said, Mom, you've never told me I forgive you. Because, like, all of my childhood and into my adulthood, I've been apologizing for everything, even things that weren't my fault. And I told her, Mom, you've never even told me I forgive you for opening a package of crackers. You've never told me I forgive you for opening a package of cheese. You've never told me I forgive you. And me saying that, and I wasn't yelling. I was bad-mouthing. And I said something critical of her. And someone with narcissistic personality disorder cannot handle criticism, especially from their emotional punching bag doormat that is not supposed to ever talk against her. I mean, my brother was allowed to talk against her for the most part, but she didn't stand for it, but I definitely wasn't allowed to. So she went from like 70 miles an hour to 0 on the highway. I seriously thought we were all going to die. I seriously think she was okay with us all dying at that moment. When I say that, I'm not exaggerating. Maybe like an hour later, she would have been like, oh, I'm glad I didn't kill my children, but she wouldn't have said that to us. But I honestly could have died at her hand that day. To her, in that situation, in her tunnel vision, red vision, it was not, it was more important that I learn that I never talk back than it was for us to be alive. If you think what I'm saying is extreme, remember, you're hearing everything from my perspective, and I'm sure from my mom's perspective, it would all be played down and not nearly as big of a deal. So during college, I went to college with people that were from all over the United States. And during Christmas break, they all went home to their home states. I went to college in the same city as my people, my family, my brother and my mom. And I chose to stay in the dorms because of situations like that. I would rather be alone in the dorms than be in a home where I'm emotionally abused. So in a way, I stood up to myself. I made decisions like that. But now let's talk about moving on. So I'm a mom now. I grew up with this example of a mom. My mom always went to her yearly doctor's checkups, but the only time I ever went to the doctor was when I had a broken ankle when I was 10. But I'm thankful that she took me to the doctor. She was married at the time, so her husband had insurance, so she didn't have to pay for it. But I'm thankful that she took care of me. We did have dental insurance and got everything free, so I got a bunch of fillings in high school. My mom was obsessive about flossing her teeth, but she never taught me how to floss her teeth. As an adult, we've been doing research about my mom's hygiene practices and found out that she used baby powder all of her life. And the lawyers researching the case on what caused my mom's death, asbestos caused by mesothelioma caused by asbestos from Johnson & Johnson's baby powder. The lawyers asked me, did your mom teach you hygiene? No, my mom yelled at me if I went to church without taking a shower. Does that count? A lot of times on the way driving to church, she would be screaming at me at the top of her lungs all the way to church, and I would be bawling my eyes out, crying my eyes out the whole way to church. And when we got to church, it was expected of me to put a fake smile on and act happy at church. I remember one time at church, I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel like standing up and singing. So I sat down and I didn't sing. And my mom said, stand up and sing. And I was thinking, would God really want me to sing if my heart's not in it? I mean, are we really doing all this for God, or are we doing this just for show? Are we just dressing up and putting fake smiles on at church? Are we doing this for people or for God? You know? So as an adult, if my husband or myself don't feel like singing, you know what? I think it's better to be quiet than to be hypocritical. A hypocrite. That's what I was taught to be in church. And I didn't like it. I especially didn't like that. And as an adult, I've realized that God knows my heart. He knows my suffering. He knows my situation. And God does not expect me to put a fake smile on when everything's not okay. God cares about my emotional well-being, even if my parents didn't. So now I'm a mom. And I'm trying my best. But I sometimes explode. And I feel guilty. And I apologize. And it was recently pointed out to me by someone who's very generous and kind with her words, that the difference between people like my mom and the difference between them and regular people is the ability to see when you make a mistake and to right the error. So if I yell at my husband or yell at my kids, I can calm myself down, apologize, give hugs, and say, you know what? I was wrong. And a lot of times, I'm learning to express myself with words. I learned that from Daniel Tiger. Have you ever watched Daniel Tiger? Have you ever watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? Daniel Tiger is a spinoff of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Either one's good. It teaches you how to talk about how you feel. If you're feeling jealous, say the words so you can work through it with your friend you're feeling jealous of. A lot of times I'll tell my kids, please stop doing that. I'm starting to feel frustrated. I don't want to get angry. And so I can see before it comes the rage monster, right? I wouldn't say that I have irrational, unpredictable rage, but with my kids being so little, I think sometimes they might think that my anger is unpredictable because sometimes I'm more patient than other times. And I remember thinking that about my dad as a kid. I think that's normal for normal people, not necessarily a narcissistic tendency. So I have to catch myself if I have any narcissistic tendencies. But I think because I was the emotional punching bag and the doormat of a narcissist, it all the more makes me not one, because I more have the tendency of always putting others before myself and always thinking of others' needs before mine. And I have to stop and remind myself, oh yeah, I need to eat. I fed everyone in my family. Why am I hungry? Oh yeah, I need to eat. Oh yeah, I gave everyone else a bath. I probably need a shower too, you know? Whereas with my mom, it was more like the opposite. Other people have had worse childhoods than mine. I'm not saying mine was the worst. I'm not saying it was the best. But everyone has been wounded. And maybe that's the message that you can get from this. I want you to get something positive from this. I don't want you to walk away saying, oh, poor Evelyn, she had a sucky childhood. Because a lot of people have a lot worse situations than me. I always had a roof over my head. I always had food to eat. And most of the time I wasn't physically abused. I wasn't ever sexually abused. But honestly, that was a miracle because my mom married some scumbags and God really, really, really protected me. Because my mom didn't. But God did. God protected me. I almost, that's a whole other tangent. I almost died at the hands of one of my mom's creepy stalker ex-husbands, but we survived. That video and that story is for a different day, a different time. But he was definitely thinking of murder. And God protected me from that too. So that's good. Now that I'm a mom, I find this struggle of don't put your kids on a pedestal and make them a narcissist, but don't beat them down either. I think there's a balance with motherhood. Like, you definitely have to call your kids out and have consequences for their actions, but also give them praise when they do something right. I think it's a balance. You don't want to have a child that thinks they're an angel and can never do anything wrong. You don't want to have a child that never has any repercussions for all the bad things that they do. You want to teach your kids to have balance. And you know what? I have found so much healing in my family. Is this family perfect? If you think it is, I've fooled you. I'm not even on Instagram, but with Facebook posts, I was going to say, in this world, Instagram and Facebook, we like to just post pictures like this. So everyone thinks, wow, Evelyn has the perfect family. Her life's perfect, right? And my mom, she always wanted everyone to think that she was perfect. And all the more so, I don't want people to think that about me, because I grew up telling the world a lie that we're fine. I'm happy. We're fine. Thank you. While dying inside. I was a depressed little kid for a while there. And it wasn't until I really moved out from my mom's situation that I was okay. And even then, she still had some control over me and really affected my emotional well-being while in college. And some of my college friends can attest to that sometimes I was an emotional wreck because of my mom. When I should have been focusing on studying and getting the laundry done and cleaning my room and working my many jobs during college. But all that to say, this family has brought me healing. Why? Because I am a homemaker. What's the homemaker? That means I can create an atmosphere of love and peace and forgiveness, generosity. I can teach my kids not to hit, and teach my kids to share, and teach my kids to love each other. My kids all from a young age know how to say please, thank you, and I love you. And to me, I've done my job. If they know please, thank you, and I love you, that's important to me. To me, that's on my priorities list, up there with learning the alphabet and how to count, right? My kids are looking at me and my husband didn't have an example of a healthy marriage. I didn't have an example of a healthy marriage. All we saw is what not to do. So we're still figuring this out. Last night, we spent time praying together and just like apologizing to each other for being failures at marriage because we don't know what the heck we're doing, but at least we're figuring it out together, right? And God can help us with that. It's okay to seek marriage counseling. We've done that before. We probably should still be in marriage counseling, but that's another story. But I think, that's the other thing. My children, my daughters being able to grow up together and no one will ever take them away from me or take them away from each other. That is healing to my heart, missing my sister. Because my sister, she doesn't have memories of the first 19 months of her life, but I do. And I changed all of her diapers, and my brother fed her all her bottles, and my mom was out dating men. And then she placed my sister for adoption because she wasn't benefiting financially from it. That sounds horrible. And I hope I'm wrong about thinking that, but that's a conclusion I've come to after many years of evaluating the reality of the situation. My sister's half Black, and my mom also didn't like being judged for that, and that's another reason she placed her for adoption. And if my sister ever watches this, I'm very sorry. She's probably aware of that fact. But if she's not, I'm very sorry that my mom was a narcissist. Can I just say that the value of a person does not lie in how they were conceived or in the color of their skin? Can I just say that you are a valuable person because God created you in his image. That's why you're valuable. You're not valuable because of what you've achieved. That's another thing. Okay, this is another thing about my mom's narcissistic personality disorder. And again, I'm diagnosing her and I'm not a doctor, right? But she would always, when she worked at the grocery store, she would talk about me. And she would say, oh, my daughter, she speaks 2 languages. She speaks English and Spanish. She's going to Bible college. She's getting a degree in missions and intercultural studies and Bible. And she's such a good girl. And she went on a mission trip for 2 months to Uruguay, South America, blah, blah, blah. So whenever I wasn't around, she would always brag on me because that would reflect back on her and make her look like a good mom. But when I was present, she would always say, she'd always tear me down and talk bad about me and say like, oh, she would always compare me to my past self. Like, oh, in high school, that's when you were really good because that's when you would carry your Bible to school and you would teach an after school Bible study. But now you just talk back to me and you're such a bad daughter and blah, 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 blah. There's one story that I haven't shared that really was crazy. When I was in college, I came home. I was probably 19 years old, 20 years old. I would say 19, 18 maybe. And you know how we had caller IDs for a home phone? I was going through and deleting all of the ones that had no phone number listed. It just says unknown and it has no number because the caller ID only holds about like 70 numbers. And if you delete all those, then you can see more of the important numbers, right? So I was bored with nothing to do at my mom's house. No car, no cell phone. So I was probably 18. No internet, just public television, maybe a book, maybe radio. Not much to do. So I was just sitting next to the caller ID, delete all of the unknown numbers that were blank. My mom discovered that I had deleted all of the unknown numbers from the caller ID. How would a rational human being with no personality disorder react? Oh, you deleted it. Thanks. Right? Or, okay, whatever. My mom flew off the handle and was so livid and so psychotic, it was ridiculous. She lost it. She lost utter control of her rage, and she almost beat me. She would get in your face like she was gonna beat the crap out of you, but she wouldn't. She would just scream at you. And she was livid because she had a boyfriend that she had broken up with, no problem, several times, but he broke up with her and he was dating another lady. And so she was going crazy, psychotic, for real, over thinking that she was getting all these unknown calls with no one talking on the other end, thinking it was him. She ended up marrying him. He ended up becoming her 5th husband and divorcing him right before she passed away. And he was in the hospital and stuff. And I told him about that situation and I asked him, were you calling and hanging up and blocking your number? And he was like, no. See, any rational human being would know that, but she wasn't rational. The green-eyed monster of jealousy would overtake my mom, and she would become irrational. She had irrational rage. And I thank God that I don't have that irrational rage. That when I do get angry, I catch myself and I apologize. Anyway, That's all I have for you. If this video has offended or hurt someone in any way, I apologize. If this video was helpful for you, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Maybe it's helped you a little bit more understand my personality. I tend to be an encourager and a positive person. I tend not to get in on a lot of drama because I feel like life's too short. I try to control my anger. I try to express my emotions. I try to be an honest person. And part of being honest is telling the truth about how I'm really feeling. And a lot of times in American culture, when someone says, "How are you?" we feel like the only acceptable answer is fine or okay or good. But a lot of times we're not. And you know what? I just want to encourage you that it's okay to be honest about how you feel. It's okay to not be okay. How can you heal if you never acknowledge that you're hurting? So I want to end this little spiel video with prayer, if that's okay. Lord, I pray, I apologize to anyone that may have been hurt by my words. I want to respect the memory of my mom. I want to love her and respect her, but at the same time, acknowledge the truth that there are personality disorders, and some people need to seek help. And there are people who grow up in painful environments, and sometimes they need to heal. Lord, I just pray, Lord, for anyone that's watching this video, either now or in the future, that you would bring healing where there's hurt and pain, and that you would bring wisdom on how to deal with difficult situations. Thank you, Lord, that you protect us and you take care of us and you provide for us and you love us. Thank you, Lord, for all that you've done for us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. God bless you. Thank you for listening to me. And I'll talk to you later. I see the chat box now, and that some people have said hugs and sent hearts. Thank you very much. Love you guys. Bye.